Governor Tim Walz, with a rare interview appearance yesterday, he made his Sunday show debut on Fox News Sunday. Anchor Shannon Bream challenged him on his track record in his state of Minnesota, specifically on the programs there that give illegal immigrants privileges and taxpayer-funded freebies.
Why should your taxpayers in Minnesota or across the states pay for those programs?
Well, that's not the vice president's position, but I will say this. Minnesota ranks as a top 5 business state. We rank as a top 3 state for children living, and we're the top state for health care access.
Shannon also asked him about his history of misstatements on his military service, his wife using IVF, and more. Here's how he responded.
And I got to be honest with you, Shannon, I don't think people care whether I used IUI or IVF when we talk about this. What they understand is Donald Trump would resist those things. I have never disparaged someone else in this, but I know that's not what Donald Trump does. They disparage everyone, the personal attacks. I will own up when I misspeak. I will own up when I make a mistake.
It's so sad that he doesn't know his own set of facts on that IVF, right? Somebody told him that, so he repeated it. But Donald Trump has talked about supporting IVF many, many times. Ben Domenech, Fox News contributor and the Spectator's editor-at-large. I mean, if you want to just take what they feed you, I guess you could feast off of that. I'm a little hungrier than that, though, and I know you are.
You know, Governor Walz can't really get away with calling these things misstatements or misspeaking, because we can see what they actually are. When you are consistently telling people false stories about yourself, about your family, about your military history, and about your policies, and in every sense, in every instance, you are positioning yourself in a way that proves to your political advantage, or that you believe will play better than what the truth is, it's only moving in one direction. It's not like he's stumbling over his words. It's not a stutter. He's lying to us, and we can see that he's lying to us. And when he gets called on it, instead of owning up to his mistakes, he tells additional lies, or he reframes the subject in ways that don't respond to any of the questions. That question about the way that these freebies are handed to illegal immigrants in Minnesota is a major issue. And yet, because he doesn't have any defense about that plays in any real way, instead he just shifts to saying that, oh, Minnesota is a great state. And that, I think, is something that the American voter sees through now. They see that he's not just being inauthentic about his personal life story, about his military history, et cetera, but also about his policies. And Harris, I think one of the areas where we see this so clearly is the simple fact that when it comes to him being challenged by Shannon, and I'm very glad that she brought this up, on the extremist nature of Minnesota's policies when it comes to abortion, his response is to say, oh, that's been debunked at every turn, when in fact it hasn't. In fact, even places like CNN, even places like the Dispatch, even fact checkers that are not considered to be particularly right-leaning, have called out the fact that that he is lying about Minnesota's policies and how extreme they are on this.
Well, look, when it comes to the treatment of freebies for illegal immigrants and the downsourcing for actual American citizens, Minnesota's not alone in that. We're seeing it in Chicago and other places. And governors are dealing with those issues. They're closing in Chicago 3 migrant shelters just a few days ago. So they are feeling the pressures there. So for him to start off with, well, that's not really what a VP does, it is what a governor does, and that's his current situation right now, and he can't even defend that. Okay, the Democratic ticket
He's not running on his record because he can't. Yeah.
No, he's running, but just not on the record. He's running from it.
Yeah.
The Democratic ticket has only done 26 interviews between Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Since August, Trump and Vance have done 65. Here's Vice President Kamala Harris on 60 Minutes last night. A duck and dodge when asked about Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Is he a close ally? That was the question. Let's watch.
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
Wow. You can't even say the Prime Minister of Israel is a close ally. Our closest allies, that nation in the Middle East. I mean, that is unbelievable. All right, real quick. VP's Harris media blitz right now, some friendly faces. So The Late Show, The View, The Howard Stern Show, there you go, and Call Her Daddy, which was a show I believe was a podcast rather, a lot about sex. One liberal media anchor said this:
I think there is misogynation in all of this, black and white men. Big problem, but also the business world. They don't think she is serious. They don't think she's a heavyweight. And a lot of this is gender, but she's got to be more specific about her economic plans. They've got to double down on doing more interviews and serious interviews.
Well, we know they watch that network, so maybe it's part strategy that they get some from there.
Serious interviews certainly don't start with Alex Cooper over at Call Her Daddy. You can be a fan of that show, that's fine, but she interviewing Vice President Harris in a hoodie is not the kind of thing that we want to see at this stage in the campaign. And the fact that she dodged on such a critical question like Benjamin Netanyahu and the relationship that she's going to have or not have with him as president is the kind of thing that she wants to dodge at this stage. It's why she's running to Stephen Colbert. It's why she's running to Alex Cooper. It's why she's running to all these people who aren't going to be asking her the tough questions instead of respecting people enough to sit down with serious journalists, people like you, Harris, who will ask her tough questions and hold her to account.
Thank you. Governor Walz also took this swipe at former President Donald Trump in that Fox News Sunday interview with Shannon.
The people who are in the Situation Room with Donald Trump, like John Kelly as chief of staff, said he shouldn't be there. He's a damaged human being. It's about character.
Well, the Trump-Vance campaign senior official Corey Lewandowski had a reaction.
The personal jab is because Tim Walz wants to hide from his own record. The bottom line is, when Donald Trump was the president of the United States, we had peace around the world. We had economic prosperity here in our country, and we had a border that was closed. In 4 short years, everything has changed.
Well, I tell you, with that, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are giving new meaning to running for the White House.
Yeah, I think that when you see the support that they've gotten from the national security folks in the swamp, a lot of people who signed onto that letter about Hunter Biden's laptop, a lot of people who've shown themselves to be partisans first, I think the American people discount that, and they see the chaos that this world is currently in under Biden, under Kamala Harris, and I don't think that they believe that they're going to be the right people to restore the kind of stability we saw under President Trump.
You know what? Because I have you just another second here, talk to me about the early vote and how it would change things this time around. We've seen it ramp up since, obviously, the pandemic. Not a lot of time, but curious your point.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's going to be a real key factor going into this is how much Republicans are able to compete in the early vote. And some of the early signs that we have on that are very positive. I think that this is something where Democrats should be quite concerned. As much as they've talked about joy and about passionate support from their partisan base, they, I think, are going to find that it's a little tougher this time around. Ben
Domenech, always great to have you. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.